Part 3 about how my boyfriend was seeing another girl behind my back. So like I said, I was talking to his friend, and his friend said that he's been talking to this girl for 2 to 3 weeks about the time that I've been gone. And he's been telling everybody about how he wants to break up with me for her. So of course I'm sad and crying, and I confront him, and he says, oh, she's just a friend, blah, blah, blah. So I press the issue, and then he tells me that he lost feelings for me weeks ago. And that the reason why he didn't tell me was because he didn't want to hurt my feelings. Yet he led me on for 2 to 3 weeks. Like, how does that work, Alex? How? Anyway, so I blocked him because there's no way in hell that I'm going to keep talking to a guy that was making fun of me with his friends and telling everybody around him that he wanted to break up with me. That's embarrassing. Story time about how my boyfriend was seeing another girl behind my back. So a little background information, I was living with my dad and I had just started a new school, and I became really good friends with this group of kids. And in our friend group, there was this boy who we're going to call Alex, and him and I hit it off like right away. We had been talking for 2 months. And by the way, during this whole time, his friends were telling me how much he loved me and how much he wanted to be with me. So eventually him and I started dating. And of course, like any other tragic love story, I had to move far away because I had to go live with my mom, blah, 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 blah. But since I would visit my dad for the holidays, him and I would still be able to see each other sometimes, which is pretty good for a long distance relationship, especially when you're in school. So I told him about how I had to move. And he was really sad, but he said that I can trust him. Red flag number 1, because why would you say that in the first place? There should be no reason on why I have to, quote, trust you to be loyal when I'm away. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend was seeing another girl behind my back. So like I said, I told him that we were going to have to do long distance, and he was sad, but then he said that he could trust me. And like I said before, why the hell would I have to trust you? Because you should just be loyal in general, duh. So I'm like, hey, I want to spend time with you before I leave. Can we hang out? And he was like, oh, sorry, I have plans, but we can hang out later tonight. So I was like, okay, whatever. And a few hours go by. I never get a text from him or a call, nothing. So I text him and he's like, sorry, I forgot. So I'm really sad right now, but I forgave him. Quick note here, ladies, if he wanted to, he would have canceled his plans if he really wanted to see you. Anyway, so I move and fast forward 2 to 3 weeks, and Alex and I literally have only been texting, no calls, nothing like that. So I'm talking to one of his friends, and one of his friends tells me that he's been talking to this other girl, and he's been telling everybody that he's been wanting to break up with me for weeks because he wants to date her instead, like for part 3. Story time. Would you call this cheating? So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school, and I was dating this guy who we're going to call Tom, right? When we started dating, everything was super good. But a little bit into our relationship, I started to get the ick. Anything and everything he would do would literally irritate the hell out of me. So at that point, I told him that we should take a break. So we did. Well, while we were on this little break, I decided to go out with my cousin the one night. And she had brought this guy who she was talking to at the time. We're going to call him Jake. Jake and I had the same classes in school, but we never really talked to each other. Well, I started to get to know him throughout the night, and I realized we had a lot in common. I felt like he was flirting with me, so I decided to flirt with him. When we got home, I had told her how much I really liked Jake. We ended up FaceTiming and falling asleep on the phone together. We all hung out again the next day, and I invited him back to my house. Like for part 2. Would you consider this cheating? Part 2. So like I said, we all decided to hang out again the next day. It was really cold out, so I invited everybody back to my house. And when we got back to my house, we were watching horror films. And I was cuddling next to Jake on the couch. And listen, I wanted to kiss him really bad, but Tom and I had just gotten done with our so-called break. So I decided to be loyal and not do that. Well, a few days after Jake and I talking, I realized that I wanted to be with him and not Tom. So I decided to end things with Tom, and now Jake and I have been together for 1 year and 2 months, and we couldn't be happier. But every time that we bring up Tom, Jake always tells me that I cheated on him. Would you consider what I did cheating? Story time. I was the toxic best friend. So a little background information. I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. And at the beginning of the year, I met this girl who we're going to call Riley. Riley and I hit it off straight away. Like a week after knowing each other, she knew everything about me and I knew everything about her. Well, then she tells me about this guy that she's talking to, who we're going to call Jay. She said that they would hook up sometimes and he would text her sometimes, but she said that I couldn't tell anybody because he said that it had to be a secret. So I tried telling her that he sounded like a fuckboy, but she decided she was going to do whatever she wanted, and I was like, okay. So fast forward to the end of the year, he adds me on Snapchat. Okay, don't get me wrong, he was really hot, but I had my own thing going on, so I really didn't pay that much attention to him, and I thought he maybe added me on Snapchat to be like, oh my god, I really like your best friend. And then I also was caught between a rock and a hard place. Do I tell my best friend that the guy that she likes just added me on Snapchat? Or do I lie to her? Well, I was going to tell her until I got a Snapchat from him, like for part 2. Storytime. Everybody's saying that I cheated on my ex-boyfriend, but I want your guys' opinion. So a little background information. I was a college student, and I had been with this guy who we're going to call Jacob for about 6 months. Towards the end of his and I's relationship, stuff just started to get really boring, and every day I would get the ick from him. Now, at this time also, I had gotten a new job. While I was working, I had met this guy who we're going to call Tim. Since I was a college student, I decided to start working more, so Tim and I would see each other literally every day. Him and I really hit it off, like straight away. Not to mention, him and I had a lot of things in common, his sense of humor was great. Well, the one night before work got out, Tim asked for my number, and I said yes. However, since I was still with Jacob, I decided that I was going to break up with him before I texted Tim. So I broke up with him. Fast forward to now, Tim and I are in a super good relationship, but now everyone's saying that I cheated on Jacob. What do you guys think? Story time about how I got my ex-toxic best friend jumped. So a little background information, I was 16 and a sophomore in high school. And like any of these toxic best friend story times, she was super jealous of me for literally no reason. She would literally try to be better than me in everything. Like when I did a sport or a club, she would join immediately right after. And it wasn't oh, I'm going to join my best friend. No, it was, I'm going to join so that way I can show her that I'm better than her. For example, in 6th grade, I was captain on the volleyball team, and she decided that she was going to try out her sophomore year. She played it off as if she just wanted to try it out, but then I got announced captain, and she was pissed off when she heard that. She literally blocked me on everything, and she came from a super wealthy family, so she was used to getting whatever she wanted. And my whole friend group would literally tell me, you need to stop being friends with her, she's toxic, she's this, she's that. The only thing that stopped me from being friends with her was the blackmail, like for part 2 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, the only thing that was stopping me from not being her friend was the blackmail that she had. Every time that I pissed her off, or even just randomly, she would be like, oh, I'm going to send this out. I'm going to expose you. She was just overall a shitty friend. So I had an exposing account on Instagram where I would expose people in my class. It got banned, but she DM'd the account the blackmail. Little did she know it was literally me who was running it. Obviously, I didn't post it, but I showed one of my friends, and we kind of made a plan to get rid of the blackmail. So my birthday was coming up, and I was going to Disney, and my mom said that I could invite 2 friends. Originally, I wasn't going to invite Tessa, but since I had this plan, I invited her and one of my other friends. On the 3rd night, my friend and I decided to take our plan into action. Tessa was sleeping, so I went on her phone, and I went and deleted all the pictures, like for part 3. Part 3 about how I got my toxic ex-best friend jumped. So like I said, on the 3rd night, she was sleeping, so we went on her phone. I deleted all of the blackmail that she had on me, and I even went a step further and screenshotted all of the nudes that she was sending back and forth with older guys, and these guys were way older than her, like way older. And I sent them to myself and deleted the text off of her phone. Fast forward, we drop her off at her house. I stay over my friend's house, and we decide that we're going to post everything to my exposing page. And we also came up with a really good idea. Why not send this to Tessa's parents? So we sent them to her parents. And guys, when I tell you this exposing page had so many people on it, it really did. Somebody was like, OMG, like, please send a face reveal, like, I won't tell anybody. So what did I do? I sent a picture of Tessa, and that person posted it to their Snapchat story. Fast forward to the first day of school. We're outside for gym class, and 3 girls beat her ass. Story time about how I saw my boyfriend propose to another girl in front of me. So a little background information. At the time, my boyfriend and I had been together for around 4 years. We had 2 kids together, and our relationship was pretty rocky. Within the first year of us dating, he would cheat on me all the time, and both times that I was pregnant, he would cheat on me also.
Now, after I popped out the second kid, our relationship was going pretty well. And if you're wondering why I didn't leave him when he was cheating on me all the time, well, it was mainly because I grew up in a broken home. And remembering how hard it was on me whenever my parents broke up, I didn't want that for them. Well, over the past few months, my boyfriend had been traveling all over the country with his dad, going to meetings and stuff because he was getting ready to take over half the company. Well, fast forward, it's a Thursday, and my boyfriend has a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of state, and later that night we were supposed to get on a flight with our friends to go to the Bahamas. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend literally proposed to another girl right in front of me. So like I said, my boyfriend had a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of town, and that night we were supposed to be on a plane to the Bahamas with our friends. So while he was getting ready for this meeting, I went and I dropped the kids off early, and he went to this meeting, and I drove our luggage over to our friend's house because they were just going to drive us to the airport. So my girlfriend and I are super pumped to go on this trip. So we decided to start drinking early, and we went somewhere to get drinks. She suggests this high-end place because the guy at the bar has a crush on her and always gives her free drinks. So we're sitting there having a really good time drinking at the bar. So while we're sitting there, we hear a bunch of clapping and cheering coming from outside. So us being drunk and nosy, we go out there to see what's going on. And what are the chances I walk out there and my boyfriend is down on one knee in front of another girl? And I'm not very confrontational whenever I drink, so I told my best friend to just take me back to her house. When we got back, it was around 6 p.m. And my boyfriend tells me that he's just going to meet us at the airport like for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend proposed to another girl right in front of me. I know this is late, but better late than never. So like I said, we left, I went back to her house, and my boyfriend has the audacity to text me, I'll just meet you guys at the airport. So my best friend's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go beat him up? Of course I said no, so I told her and her boyfriend to just go to the airport while I figured out what I was going to do, and to not say a word. Which was hard for my best friend because she was confrontational as fuck. So I texted my boyfriend saying that I was sick and I just wasn't going to go to the Bahamas with them, when in reality I was packing up our whole house, leaving him with only his clothes and his shoes. So I put all the stuff in storage and I just decided to move back to my mom's house. And yes, this was in a span of a few days. So the whole time that he was gone, I was acting like everything was okay. On the last day of the trip, I sent him a text saying that I knew about everything. And I said I never wanted to hear from him again and I never wanted him to see the kids again. And he took that quite literally. I never got a text back. Well, 4 months after all this happened, I soon find out that he got a new house in North Carolina with his new wife and they have a daughter on the way.
Storytime about how my best friend got my house raided. So a little background information, I was 16 and in 11th grade, and we're gonna call my best friend Jenna. Jenna and I have been on and off friends since elementary school. Now, the reason why we were on and off friends was because Jenna was the type of person who ended up in drama all the time. And coincidentally, anytime that I would stop being her friend, I would be in no drama. Now, there have been multiple times where I've tried to break off our friendship for good, but Jenna, of course, was the type of girl who would threaten to unalive herself whenever things didn't go her way. And I low-key have a savior complex. Also, I literally lived right across the street from her. So it was very hard to cut this friendship off. Well, anyways, fast forward, so her and I are friends, which also wasn't good because she was a very bad influence on me. For example, I didn't have a driver's license, but I had a car. So of course I would go pick her up and her and I would fuck shit up together, aka do bad things. Well, the one night I let her drive and she ended up going to my ex-boyfriend's house like for part 2 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, no license, but I had a car and I let her drive that night. And she went to my ex-boyfriend's house. Now, her and him used to be close whenever him and I were dating. And I didn't think anything of it until she called him and she kept telling him to come outside of his house so we could fight him. And I'm telling her to stop, but she just keeps laughing the whole time and she always does shit like this. And I was tired of being pulled into shit like this because then I got named the psycho stalker girl. So then I find out that after she went home that night, she texted my ex with this whole elaborate story about how I was the one who made her drive to his house and say all that shit. So fast forward, her and I got into it at school because I told a counselor that she was threatening to unalive herself because I was really worried for her. But then she starts posting stuff about my mental health on social media, saying things like, oh, she has zebra stripe arms. And I fought her after that. Because the only reason why I told our counselor is because I gave a shit about her mental health, like for part 3. Part 3 about how my best friend got my house raided. So like I said, she posted stuff online about my mental health, and then her and I, we ended up fighting at school, and her mom decided to press charges. But then I ended up showing the cops everything that she had said to me online and all the bullying that she was doing, and how she would literally blackmail me into being friends with her. And this made Jenna and Jenna's mom super unhappy, so they ended up filing a false report about me to the police, saying that I have illegal stuff in my house, and I do this, and I do that, and I plan on unaliving my mom. Like, what the fuck? So in the middle of the night, my whole family and I are woken up by this loud banging on our front door. So my mom, hurry up, go open the door, and they're saying that they have a warrant, and come to find out, the only thing that they could find were a bunch of empty vapes, which my mom was not happy about. And yeah, my mom and I's relationship is super rocky sometimes, but I would never try to unalive her. Story time about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So a little background information, I was 16 and it was during the summertime, and I was super excited because I had just got my license, but my parents had this idea that if they made me drive around and do all their errands, that I would be a better driver. So I was pretty much like their BITCH. Anyway, so the one night my mom wanted to make this recipe that she saw on TikTok, and she didn't have the right seasonings for it, so who did she tell to go to the store? Yours truly, me. And on Sundays, the mini market that was in our town would close at 4 o'clock. So I had to drive like 30 minutes away to the nearest Target. And when I got there, I had to park in the back because they had like 10 handicap spaces up front, another 10 for when you sit there and they bring your shit out to you, and another 5 whenever you're picking something up that you already ordered. But in all honesty, that didn't bother me because I had never heard about any girls getting trafficked at a grocery store. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how I almost got kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, I parked all the way in the back of the parking lot. I mean, okay, not all the way in the back, but I was damn near close. So I go in, and I'm not too familiar with this Target. I've only been here a few times because the mini market in my hometown is usually the one that I go to. So I'm looking around, and I realize that there's this little girl following me. But it seemed like she was more like keeping an eye on me. Like she would stand like 20 feet behind me, but just like stare at me, you know, peek through the aisles. And she had did that for like 10 minutes. But whenever I finally went up to the checkout, she was gone. And this woman came up to me. She was like, "Oh my gosh, have you seen my daughter? She was running around the store. I don't know where she is." So I described the little girl to her that I saw. And she was like, "Yeah, that's her. I can't find her. Will you please help me look for her?" And I didn't have the time for this because my parents were going to wring my neck. But I said, okay. Part 3 about how I was almost kidnapped at a grocery store. So like I said, she asked me to help look for her daughter. And I was like, I'm going to go tell a Target employee. And she was like, "No, don't worry. They're all already looking. They have security all over the place." And she was like, "Will you help me check the parking lot? Because I don't know if she left." She was like, "I've been having them look for the past 10 minutes. So I didn't think anything of this because I didn't think that some lady would try to kidnap me. So I went into the parking lot with her and I'm like, "Okay, where do you think she would have went? Like, did you drive here? Did she maybe go to the car?" And she was like, "No, we live like 5 minutes down the road. Do you think that we could get in your car and drive around?" And I said, "Yeah," because I thought that it would speed up the process. And my dad's truck was really high off the ground. So while we're walking, I'm like, "I think someone's under my car." And she was like, "What? No, it's probably just the shadow." And I'm like, "No, there's someone under my car." So I turn around to walk back into the store and she starts like pulling my arm towards my car. So an employee called the police whenever I went in there, and long story short, they were trying to kidnap me.
Story time about how my mom planned to kill me. Yes, I said my mother. So a little background information, I was 16 years old and I was in 11th grade. Now it's not like my mom hated me my whole life, because there was a time whenever she was super happy and she did really love me. Well, it all started whenever my dad had left her. She went into this deep depression. She quit her job. She wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. She stopped cooking, stopped cleaning. And she always blamed me because she thought it was my fault that our dad left. When in reality, my dad still texts me all the time asking how I'm doing. All of a sudden, a flip switch, my mom started cooking again, going to work. I never really ate her food because it low-key looked weird. But one day I came home from school and saw her putting rat poison in my food. And I wish I was kidding. But she's fucking crazy. So I said hi, but she didn't answer me. So I tapped her on the shoulder. She turned around and put a knife up to my neck. I ran out the door, called the police. They arrested her, and now I am happily living with my father and my non-crazy. Story time about the girl who left me unconscious in the girls' bathroom. So a little background information. I was pretty young at the time. I was in 7th grade and I was 11 years old. And there was this girl who we're gonna call Jenna. Jenna hated me for absolutely no fucking reason. She would bully me because I had red hair, and she would text me literally every day at the same time, telling me to off myself and how I was weird and how nobody liked me. One day she randomly started being nice to me. She sat with me at lunch and her water bottle was empty, and she asked if I needed mine filled up too. Stupidly, I said yes.
Well, she ended up putting drugs in my water bottle. After like 20 minutes, I started feeling sick, so I went to the bathroom, and I was kneeling over the toilet when everything went black. Well, when I didn't come back from the bathroom, my teacher got worried, so she sent security looking for me. They were banging on my stall. Obviously, I was fucking unconscious, so I didn't answer. So then they called the fire department, the police, the ambulance were all there. Like for part 2 about the girl who left me unconscious in the girls' bathroom. So like I said, the fire department was there, the police, the ambulance. They called the fire department because they couldn't get the door off. And when they removed it, it fell on me. So I was injured and unconscious. And just a little background information on this girl, who, mind you, was literally 11 years old. She had a 3 criminal record and was recently in prison for 5 days, or juvie, whatever the heck you want to call it, because she brought a knife to school and tried to stab some kid who had called her fat the day before. Anyways, back to the story. I wake up 4 days later. My mom's sitting next to me. They put Abby in jail for 13 years. For suspicion of attempted murder, and she was kicked out of school. And now I'm homeschooled and failing all my classes. I now have seizures because of the drugs that she gave me. So yeah,